Hello storygoers, and welcome back to another episode of Tales from the Cartridge Bedtime Stories. Tonight, we join the Prince of the Underworld as he tries to escape to the world above to meet an invaluable person. But he won't have an easy time trying to get out, as we tell a short story from the wonderful world of Hades. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this wonderful tale as you fall into a deep sleep. Enjoy.
Greetings, listener. Gather round to hear this tale. The tale of the immortal prince of the underworld, as he desperately tries to escape to the world above. If I were to tell you the whole tale, it would be very repetitive, and you would likely stop listening before the end. So we'll jump into the middle of the story. So let us begin. As our protagonist, the Prince of the Underworld, Zagreus, has been struck down in some horrifyingly bloody manner that's too graphic and somewhat funny to describe. The young prince's skin felt the envelopment of the warm pool of blood at the main chamber of Lord Hades himself. Zagreus, the handsome prince, emerged from the pool of blood, having died again by the hands of an overbearing father and the pointy end of his bident. Ahead of Zagreus was the ever-sleepy Hypnos. The chthonic god of sleep looked at his clipboard to read out loud how the young man had died yet again. Zagreus tried to politely ignore the embodiment of sleep and walked by. The desk of the god of the underworld stood ever tall, as it had the last time Zagreus died. The loyal three-headed Cerberus sat to the left of the desk, as all heads looked to Zagreus as if begging to be pet. The prince smiled as he bestowed scratches upon the three-headed canine. He noticed his teacher, Achilles, down the hall to the far side of the house of Hades. The once living hero turned teacher to the underworld prince noticed his student across the way and gave him a wave. Zagreus waved back as his teacher gave him a look as if saying, "Keep going." Zagreus turned to walk to his room, but ran into the primordial god Nyx before he could. Being that she was night incarnate didn't scare Zagreus away from approaching the woman who was a second mother to him. She asked of his journeys and setbacks, which Zagreus told her without hesitation. He had not escaped the underworld yet, but Nyx believed in him and made sure he knew it. Zagreus always cared for her more than she would ever know, but Nyx always knew, and she cared for him just as much. The prince wished her well and walked to his bedchambers, passing the noisy and filled lounge where shades and house staff alike ate and talked merrily. The prince had no time for such leisures. He turned the corner to enter into his disheveled room that did not show like one of a prince, as you might imagine. One might say he was a bit of a slob. But Zagreus had more on his mind than cleaning his dirty robes and undergarments off the floor. He was desperate to escape. Desperate to feel what the outside world called the sun on his skin. He thought it had to feel amazing for people to talk about experiencing it. Zagreus continued on through his bedchambers and out to the training grounds, where the odd skeleton known as Skelly awaited. The once living person now was just the opposite, a moving pile of bones that loved to be hit for unknown reasons. He was peculiar, especially to the young prince of the dead. The ever-witty Skelly joked with Zagreus, encouraging him to continue on his journey to the outside world, and offering a sparring match in which the skeleton would be beaten and not fight back. Zagreus politely declined as he put away the shield of chaos known as Aegis. The prince had an array of weapons at his disposal to help him escape Hades. These weapons were known as the Infernal Arms. The same infernal arms the gods themselves used to defeat the Titans ages ago. As he walked past Coronat, the heart-seeking bow, young Zagreus approached the weapon he felt most skilled with. Stygius, the Stygian blade. Once wielded by Poseidon himself, it was now in possession of the young prince of the underworld, and it felt good to hold. Nearby, at the keepsake display case, the prince examined the items he had collected on his journey. He examined each one and decided to take the owl pendant. He was always wanting help from any god he could take it from, especially Athena, on this night. Zagreus walked to the edge of the courtyard, saying goodbye to Skelly once again. He walked to the ledge and jumped down into Tartarus. As he made it to the first floor, a golden light appeared from thin air before Zagreus. A boon. He approached it and put forward his hand, graciously accepting the help from the goddess of wisdom and strategic warfare, Athena. Before Zagreus was 3 abilities: Divine Strike, Holy Shield, and Divine Dash. Zagreus smiled as the fates were on his side this night. Divine Dash was his favorite boon from Athena, perfect for keeping him safe on his journey and stopping attacks from hurting him. He chose it as Athena's gift enveloped him. He thanked the goddess once again, and her presence disappeared. as Hades' minions approached. Two large, wretched thugs, clubs in hand, and a wretched witch approached the prince. The witch sent forth 3 projectiles to harm the young intruder. Zagreus dashed forward as his divine protection from Athena activated and sent the projectiles back at the witch, killing it. With his blade in hand, Zagreus cut down the wretched thugs quickly before moving to the door ahead. The immortal prince continued to cut through his father's minions, who were set on stopping him from escaping. But none could withstand his ferocity and skill. Every time Zagreus tried to escape, his skills would become better and better, improving every time. He entered into a room with a dozen wretched pests littered about, each one throwing out deadly mines that exploded when approached. Zagreus moved quickly, fast enough to move away from the blasts of the mines, and quick enough with his strikes to remove each pest. Several numbskulls manifested, their goofy, skeletal faces chomping at Zagreus as he slammed his sword into the ground and the force of his strike wiping them all out. As he entered the next room in the maze of chambers, Zagreus noticed a familiar face. It was the forever punished former king, Sisyphus, and his bolder companion, Boldy. Sisyphus had cheated death twice and paid for it for the rest of his eternity, being forced to push Boldy up a steep hill for it to always roll back down before reaching the top. For one who died in such a selfish nature, Sisyphus had time to reflect on his actions and was nothing as the man he once was. Zagreus knew only of his kindness and good gestures. Sisyphus greeted the young prince and asked how his adventures had been. Zagreus gave a quick update as the once king encouraged his friend on. Zagreus said his goodbyes and continued forward. Moving into the next room, he realized he knew it all too well. The room of the double inferno bombers. Vile creatures known for the destructive bombs they threw haphazardly. Zagreus knew too well their destructive power, as he died several times to them in the past. The Inferno bombers threw their bombs as the prince dashed away, his power from Athena repelling the bombs as Zagreus impaled his sword into one of them. He slashed over and over into one of the Inferno bombers as it threw bombs around itself and jumped away. Zagreus didn't have time to move as the impact from the bombs sent him flying back onto the ground. The prince stood once more, bringing his right hand up and firing 3 cast shots out. The red pointed bloodstones flew forward, finding their mark and slaying the already wounded Inferno bomber. The other bomber did not lament for his companion, sending out more bombs of destruction to try and kill the prince. Zagreus dashed away again, sending each bomb back to the remaining bomber as the Stygian blade cut through it, ending the battle. Zagreus took a moment to catch his breath as a sudden light appeared before him. The crimson red of an Olympic boon hovered before Zagreus, as he knew it could only be the god of war himself, Ares. He accepted the Olympic boon as the god of war himself congratulated his kin on the bloodshed he had caused thus far and hoped to see more. Ares shone 3 powers from which Zagreus could choose from, and the answer was clear. The Curse of Agony, a power so great that every swing of his blade would inflict another burst of damage known as doom upon its victims. Zagreus thanked his godly cousin for the gift and journeyed forward. The next room over was quiet and quaint, as the sloshing of the river Styx could be heard to the right of Zagreus. It could only mean one thing. The trusty boatman, Charon, awaited inside, his wares on display for purchase. The prince said his hello as the boatman of the dead gave his usual groan of acknowledgement. Zagreus couldn't help but notice the blue light from the boon of Poseidon as one of the items of purchase. He smiled as he pulled out 150 oobles and gave them to Charon, who happily accepted. Zagreus opened the boon from his uncle as the proud boom of Poseidon's voice echoed out around the great halls of Tartarus. He offered the power of the seas themselves, as Zagreus gladly accepted the power of the floodshot, turning the prince's cast bloodstones into ones with the power to send foes flying backwards. Zag thanked his uncle as he walked to the next chamber, which he never enjoyed going into. It was unfortunately due to whom was inside every time he went in. Megara, one of the 3 Furies and the oldest of her 3 sisters. She was known for her role in punishing adulterers, oath breakers, and thieves. Zagreus couldn't help but notice the beauty of her pale blue skin, illuminated by the purple flame-lit torches from around the walls of the room. She stared at Zagreus, annoyance painted over her face. He knew it all too well. Her disappointment in him. She couldn't understand, he thought. With her whip in hand, Megara told her once friend that she didn't care for his excuses and to ready his weapon. Zagreus reluctantly followed suit, gripping the handle of his blade. The Fury rushed forward, trying to slam into Zagreus as he barely dodged away. Holding her whip high, she swung it with force all around her, the whip whirl harming the prince and causing a terrible wound to his abdomen. Pushing forward, the prince used his blade and hacked at Megara, causing multiple wounds. It pained him to fight his friend. The two battled, causing harm onto one another, reluctant but ever forceful. The Fury snarled as she summoned minions from the depths of Hades to attack Zagreus. Large, wretched thugs attacked, swinging their clubs at the young prince. As he dispatched them, he noticed Megara missing. Zag turned to find her bent forward, ready to pounce, as she leapt to strike. Bringing his hand up, Zagreus shot forth his flood shot, the impact sending Megara flying back onto the wall behind her. As she shook off the blow, she looked down to see the blade of Stygian inside of her stomach. She looked to Zagreus, holding his blade, his face in agony. The pools of Hades began to take her as Megara wished misfortune onto the prince. The blood took her body away, leaving Zagreus behind. The prince cursed himself and the aches his heart made him feel. Though she could not die, Zagreus felt that Megara would never forgive him. Begrudgingly, the prince of the underworld took his sword and began his move from Tartarus into the hellfire plains of Asphodel.
Thank you again for listening to another episode of Bedtime Stories. We hope you enjoyed, and we hope that you sleep well. Good night.